My name is Alex Carter, and I'm 25 years old, the family problem solver. After grinding my way through college and paying my own damn student loans, I had just landed the biggest deal in my company's history, a $1.2 million contract. This was supposed to be the moment that finally proved my worth, the moment I'd finally get some respect. But as I pulled up to my childhood home, my entire life was sitting on the curb in a dozen black trash bags. My mother looked me dead in the eye and said, "It's time for you to get out." The coldness in her voice, it shattered something inside me, and I had no idea that their reason for throwing me out would lead to a phone call, 6 months later, that would give me the power to destroy them all. If you've ever felt like the black sheep, let me know where you're watching from, and make sure to hit like and subscribe, because you're going to want to see how this ends. While my family saw me as the underachiever, the guy with the silly computer job, the truth was, I was quietly building an empire they knew nothing about. At 23, right after graduation, I landed an entry-level gig at a downtown marketing firm. It wasn't glamorous. The pay was barely enough to cover my student loan payments and the $500 a month my mom charged me for rent. But while my brother Mark was coasting through his residency, still getting his car insurance paid for by our mom, I was grinding. I mean, really grinding. I was the first one in the office and the last one to leave. I learned everything. I studied every campaign, reverse engineered every success, and taught myself skills that weren't even in my job description. Slowly, things started to change. I wasn't just the kid fetching coffee anymore. I started speaking up in meetings, offering ideas that were different, ideas that worked. My boss, a tough but fair guy named Peterson, started to notice. He'd stop by my desk. "Carter," he'd say, "that angle you found on the analytics report, that was sharp." It wasn't a big party like my family threw for Mark's publications. It was just a quiet nod of respect. And honestly, it meant more to me than any forced celebration ever could. Within 2 years, I wasn't entry level anymore. I was leading my own projects, small ones at first, but then they got bigger. While my family was busy patting my sister Jessica on the back for passing another bar exam, I was managing a $250,000 ad budget for a tech client. I never talked about it at home. What was the point? It would just be met with a blank stare from my mom or a condescending comment from Mark like, "Oh, that's cute. So you, make Facebook ads?" They had no concept of the scale, the pressure, the strategy. To them, my world was small and insignificant. A little game I played on a screen. So I kept it to myself. I kept my head down and worked. I sacrificed weekends. I missed parties with friends. Every ounce of frustration I felt at home, every dismissive comment, every forgotten achievement, I channeled it. I poured it into my work. My ambition became a silent rebellion. And it paid off. The opportunity came in the form of a massive potential client. A legacy brand from New York looking to completely overhaul its digital presence. It was the white whale, the kind of account that could put our firm on the map. Everyone wanted a piece of it, but Peterson gave the lead to me. Me, the 25-year-old they still saw as a kid. He looked me in the eye and said, "Don't screw this up, Carter." I didn't. I lived and breathed that project for 6 weeks. I barely slept. The presentation in New York was the biggest moment of my professional life, and I nailed it. I didn't just win the account, I secured a $1.2 million contract, the single largest deal in our firm's history. Peterson took me out for a steak dinner that night, the expensive kind. He told me a leadership position was opening up, and it had my name written all over it. I felt seen, valued. For the first time, my success wasn't being measured against my siblings. It was just mine. But here's the most important part. The part my family never saw. The secret weapon I was building in the shadows. All those years of living at home, of paying my rent, of being the responsible one. I wasn't just surviving. I was saving. Every dollar I didn't spend on the fancy cars or expensive vacations my siblings enjoyed, I tucked away. My mom thought I was broke. She'd occasionally slip me a $20 bill and say, "Here, go get yourself a decent meal." I'd just nod and thank her, then deposit that 20 right into my savings account. They had no idea. While they saw the beat-up Honda Civic I drove, they didn't see the numbers climbing in my high-yield savings account. While they joked about me still living in my childhood bedroom, they didn't know I was methodically paying down my student debt month after month, chipping away at the financial chains they thought still bound me to them. They saw the quiet, agreeable kid who fixed their Wi-Fi. They didn't see the man who was becoming financially independent. Before I left for that New York trip, I checked my account balance. The number stared back at me from the screen. $42,753. Over 40 grand. It was my escape fund. My freedom fund. My one-day fund. It was the tangible result of every sacrifice, every late night, every time I swallowed my pride and just kept working. It was proof that I wasn't the failure they thought I was. I was a quiet success story. They were too blind to read. And as I boarded that plane to New York, I had no idea just how soon I would need to cash in on that secret and use it to build a new life from the ashes of the one they were about to burn down. The trip to New York was a blur of success. The presentation went flawlessly. The clients were ecstatic. That $1.2 million contract felt heavy and real in my briefcase. For the first time, I wasn't just Alex, the little brother. I was Alex Carter, a professional who had just achieved something massive. On my last afternoon, I walked through Soho, feeling the buzz of the city, and decided to buy gifts. A nice silk scarf for my mom, a set of craft beers for Dave, a ridiculously expensive pen for Jessica, the corporate lawyer, and for Mark, a vintage medical illustration I found in a small gallery, something I thought he'd genuinely appreciate. They weren't just gifts. They were peace offerings. They were my way of saying, "See, my path is working too. Be proud of me." But during the trip, something felt off. The usual family group chat was silent. When I texted my mom a picture of Times Square, her only reply, hours later, was a single word. Nice. That was it. No exclamation point, no questions. Just nice. The night before my flight home, I sent a text saying I couldn't wait to see everyone and tell them my good news. The response, again from my mom, was strange. It said, "We need to discuss some changes when you get back." Changes? My mind raced. Was someone sick? Was she thinking of moving? The message felt cold, impersonal, like a memo from HR. Then, halfway to the airport on my way back to Chicago, my phone rang. It was my brother, Dave. He never called me directly. "Hey," I answered, trying to sound cheerful. "What's up?" There was a pause. His voice was clipped, formal. "Where are you right now?" he asked. Not, "How was the trip?" Not, "Glad you're back." Just, "Where are you?" "In a car, heading home from O'Hare," I said, a knot tightening in my stomach. "Why? Is everything okay?" Another long pause. It felt like an eternity. "Just get home, Alex," he said. "We all need to talk to you." And then he hung up. The rest of the ride was agony. I tried calling Jessica and Mark. Both calls went straight to voicemail. My messages in the group chat were marked as read, but no one responded. The good feeling from New York, the pride, the excitement, it was all evaporating, replaced by a creeping dread. What could be so urgent that it required a family tribunal? When the Uber turned onto my street, everything looked normal. Kids playing on lawns, neighbors walking their dogs. It was a perfect spring afternoon. Our 2-story blue house came into view, the same house I'd lived in my entire life. And then I saw it. At the end of our driveway, lined up neatly by the curb, were at least a dozen large black trash bags. They were bulging, straining at the seams, and standing in the yard, like a silent, grim welcoming committee, were four figures. My mother Carol is in her gardening apron. My brother Mark, arms crossed over his chest. My sister Jessica, looking impatient in one of her business casual outfits. And Dave, looking down at his shoes. My blood ran cold. "You can stop here," I told the driver, my voice a whisper. I got out, my luggage feeling impossibly heavy. The air was still, and the only sound was the distant hum of a lawnmower. None of them moved. None of them smiled. I walked slowly up the driveway, my heart pounding against my ribs. What's going on?" I asked, my voice cracking. "What are all these bags?" My mother stepped forward. Her face was a mask of cold resolution, an expression I'd seen 1,000 times when she was disappointed in me. She didn't look at the gifts in my hand. She looked right through me. And then she delivered the line that would detonate my entire world. "Your things are packed," she said, her voice flat, devoid of any emotion. "You're 25 years old now, Alex. It's time for you to get out." Get out? The words hung in the air, obscene and unreal. My brain couldn't process them. I looked from my mother to Mark, then to Jessica, searching for some sign that this was a cruel joke. But their faces were hard, unforgiving. "What are you talking about?" I stammered. "Get out? I live here. We never discussed this." My mother scoffed, a small, ugly sound. "I've been hinting for months that you should be on your own. You chose not to listen." Hinting. She called her constant criticism, her endless comparisons to my siblings hinting. "This is insane," I said, my voice rising. "I just got back from the most important business trip of my life. I have nowhere to go." Mark stepped forward then, puffing out his chest like he was the man of the house. "That's a failure to plan on your part, Alex. It's time you learned some responsibility." The hypocrisy was staggering. This is from the man who still had my mother paying for his vacations. "You need to stand on your own 2 feet," Jessica added, checking her watch as if my sudden homelessness was an inconvenience to her schedule. The shock was beginning to wear off, replaced by a white-hot anger. "My own 2 feet?" I shot back, my voice trembling. "I pay you $500 a month in rent, Mom. I buy my own groceries. I'm the one who fixes everything around this house that breaks. How is that not being responsible?" My mother waved a dismissive hand. "Your rent barely covers your food and utilities. It's been a charity." A charity. Living in my own home, the home my father left to all of us, was a charity. And that's when it clicked. A dark, ugly suspicion that had been lurking in the back of my mind. "This isn't about me being responsible, is it?" I said, looking straight at my mother. "This is about the house. You're selling the house." A flicker of surprise, of guilt, crossed her face before she shut it down. "My financial decisions are none of your business." "They are if they involve making me homeless," I yelled, finally losing control. "Dad's will. He left the house to all of us, to all four of us." I remember the lawyer explaining it. An uncomfortable silence fell over them. They exchanged guilty glances. They had gambled on me not remembering, on me being too young, too weak to fight back. And then Dave, who had been silent the whole time, finally spoke, his voice barely a whisper. "She got an offer, Alex. A really good one." "Dave," Jessica hissed. "He deserves to know," he mumbled. The ugly truth spilled out in a torrent of their own arguments. My mother had received an all-cash offer for the house, $750,000. The buyers wanted immediate occupancy, and instead of talking to me, instead of giving me notice, they had all conspired. They had decided together that my share of the inheritance would be significantly reduced to compensate for the years I had lived at home after college. This wasn't an eviction. It was a calculated financial amputation. They weren't just kicking me out, they were robbing me. They had waited until I was 3,000 miles away, celebrating a victory I thought would finally make them proud. They waited until I was at my highest point to drag me down to my lowest. They packed my memories, my clothes, my entire existence into black plastic bags, like it was garbage. And they stood there, my mother and my siblings, a united front of betrayal, watching my world crumble without an ounce of remorse. And that's when I realized, after all the years of trying, all the years of hoping, I never had a family at all. At this point, I don't even have the words for what I was feeling. If you're as outraged as I am right now, do me a favor and comment with just one word to describe this family's actions. But instead of breaking down, that rage turned into a cold, hard strength I never knew I had. I didn't cry, not at first. As I drove away from that house, the house that was no longer my home, something inside me went cold. The hot tears of rage and betrayal dried up, and what was left was a chilling, absolute clarity. It was like a switch had been flipped. For 25 years, I had been living in a fog, chasing an approval that was never going to come from people who never saw me as an equal. They would never change. The realization wasn't sad. It was just a fact. Like knowing the sky is blue. And in that moment, sitting in my beat-up Honda Civic with my life stuffed into trash bags in the back, I made a silent promise to myself. Enough. This was the last time they would ever have this kind of power over me. Never again. I didn't drive aimlessly. I drove straight to the one place I knew was safe. My best friend Mike's apartment. When he opened the door and saw my face, he didn't even need an explanation. He just pulled me into a hug, then helped me haul every single one of those humiliating black bags up to his spare room. He and his girlfriend gave me a beer, ordered a pizza, and just let me sit in silence on their couch. They didn't offer platitudes. They didn't tell me it would be okay. They just provided a space for me to breathe. My phone buzzed incessantly with texts from my family, a mix of self-righteous justifications and demands. I ignored every single one. That night, I didn't sleep. I just stared at the ceiling of that spare room and I started to plan. The pain wasn't gone. It had just transformed. It was no longer a weight crushing me. It was fuel. The next morning, while Mike was at work, I opened my laptop. The first thing I did was look at my bank account. That number, that beautiful $42,000. It wasn't an escape fund anymore. It was a war chest. My first move was tactical. Survival. I spent the entire day scouring apartment listings online. I wasn't looking for anything fancy. I was looking for a fortress, a place that was mine, a place they didn't have a key to. By the end of the day, I had scheduled 3 viewings. By the end of the week, I had signed a lease on a small one-bedroom apartment across town. The first month's rent and security deposit took a painful chunk out of my savings, but the feeling of holding those keys in my hand, that was priceless. It was the first purchase I had ever made that was entirely for me, without their input, without their judgment. My second move was for my sanity. I knew I couldn't process this alone. The years of emotional baggage were too heavy. I researched therapists online, specifically looking for someone who specialized in family trauma and narcissistic abuse. Making that first appointment felt like a bigger step than signing the lease. It felt like admitting that the damage was real, that it wasn't just in my head, that I wasn't just being dramatic, as Jessica loved to say. My third move was to throw myself into the one area of my life where I had control: my work. I walked into the office that Monday with a new kind of focus. I channeled every ounce of anger, every feeling of betrayal, into finalizing the New York contract. I worked with precision and ruthlessness I didn't know I had. My boss, Peterson, noticed. He saw the fire in my eyes, but he probably just thought it was ambition. He had no idea it was rage. Then, about 3 weeks after I'd been kicked out, the first test of my new resolve came. My phone rang. It was an unknown number, but I had a sinking feeling. I answered. It was Mark. His voice was cold, impatient. There was no hello, no how are you. He just got straight to the point. Alex, he said, Mom can't find Dad's old Omega watch. She thinks it might have been in your room. We need it. I was silent for a moment, the sheer audacity of it sucking the air from my lungs. The watch. It was a beautiful classic timepiece that my father had worn every single day. It was one of the few things I had of his that felt truly personal, that I kept in a protected case in my nightstand drawer. A drawer they had emptied into a trash bag. I don't have it, Mark, I said, my voice dangerously calm. I could hear him sigh with exasperation, as if I were the one being difficult. Look, can you just check through your stuff? We need to get it appraised for the estate settlement. It's important. His stuff. He called my entire life's possessions his stuff. He wanted me to dig through the symbols of my own humiliation to find an asset for them, an asset they planned to cash in on after cutting me out of my rightful share. And that's when the cold resolve cracked, and the hot fury underneath came roaring out. Are you kidding me? I spat into the phone. Are you actually kidding me, Mark? You want me to sift through the garbage bags you packed my life into to find a watch for you to sell? You throw me out of my own home and then you call me up asking for a favor? It's not a favor, it's family property, he said, his voice dripping with condescension. Don't be selfish, just find the damn watch, Alex. Selfish. He called me selfish. The rage was so intense that it made my hand shake. Listen to me very carefully, I said, my voice low and shaking. You will never, ever, call me and ask me for anything again. Do you understand me? You made your choice. You chose money over your brother. Now live with it. I hung up before he could respond and immediately blocked his number. I stood in the middle of my empty new apartment, my heart hammering against my ribs. I wanted to scream. I wanted to punch a wall, but I didn't. Instead, I took a deep, shuddering breath, and I went back to my laptop. That phone call was a gift. It erased any lingering doubt, any shred of sentimentality I might have had left. It solidified my resolve into something unbreakable. This wasn't just about survival anymore. This was about winning. I opened a new browser tab and started researching lawyers who specialized in inheritance disputes. They thought they had all the power. They thought they had gotten away with it. They had no idea that the quiet, agreeable kid they threw out was now quietly, methodically, building a case that would bring their entire world crashing down. The war had begun, and I was finally ready to fight back. The next 4 months were a blur of calculated moves. My life became compartmentalized. By day, I was the rising star at my firm. Peterson had given me that promotion, and with it, a significant raise. I was leading the new digital marketing division, managing a small team, and delivering results that made my New York success look like a warm-up. My confidence at work grew exponentially. I was no longer the quiet kid in the corner. I was a leader. By night, my apartment transformed into a war room. The therapy sessions were brutal, forcing me to confront years of suppressed anger and hurt. But with each session, I felt stronger, clearer. The fog of obligation and guilt was finally lifting. And in between, I met with the lawyer, a sharp, no-nonsense woman named Ms. Albright. I gave her everything: copies of my dad's will, my old rental receipts showing the $500 a month I paid my mom, and a detailed timeline of events. She listened patiently, her expression unreadable. When I was done, she simply said, "They made a very, very big mistake." I had blocked Mark's number, but the silence from the rest of my family was deafening. I assumed they were busy with the house sale, dividing up their anticipated spoils. I knew, through the grapevine of distant relatives, that they had heard about my promotion. I could only imagine their conversations, the surprise, the annoyance that the family scapegoat was suddenly doing well for himself. I knew it was only a matter of time before they would reach out, not to apologize, but to exploit. The attack came, as I expected, disguised as a celebration. It was an email from my sister, Jessica. The subject line, in all caps, read, "Urgent. Mom's birthday surprise. My stomach twisted, but I opened it. The email was nauseatingly cheerful. It detailed their grand plan to surprise our mother with a much-deserved luxury Caribbean cruise for her upcoming 60th birthday. A trip to help her relax after the stress of selling the house. The total cost was $8,000. And then came the final paragraph. The paragraph that was meant for me. It read, "We've all agreed to split the cost 4 ways, so your share is $2,000. We heard about your big promotion, which is fantastic news. This is the perfect opportunity for you to step up and show Mom how much you appreciate everything she's done. Please transfer the money to my Venmo by the end of the week. It's going to be so great to have the family together for this." I had to read it 3 times to fully absorb the sheer, unadulterated gall. There was no question. No. "Hey, Alex, we know things are weird, but would you be interested in contributing?" It was a demand, an invoice. They had already decided my level of participation. They were using my success, the very success they had always belittled, as leverage against me. The assumption was clear. Now that I had money, that money belonged to them. My promotion wasn't a source of pride for them. It was a new resource to be tapped. The old dynamic, the old Alex, was expected to fall right back in line. But the old Alex was gone. The new Alex had spent the last 4 months forging armor in the fires of betrayal. I took a deep breath, my fingers hovering over the keyboard. My first instinct was to write a scathing, multi-page takedown of their hypocrisy. But my therapy sessions had taught me something crucial. Narcissists feed on emotional reactions. The best way to disarm them is to give them nothing. No anger, no drama, just a calm, unbreachable boundary. So, I wrote back a simple 2-sentence email. "Hi, Jessica. Thanks for letting me know about the plan. I won't be participating in the group gift, but I'll be sending Mom something separately. Best, Alex." I hit send before I could second-guess myself. The response was almost instantaneous. My phone lit up with her name. I let it ring once, twice. Then I answered, putting it on speakerphone and placing it on my coffee table. I leaned back on my couch, a strange sense of calm washing over me. This was it, the moment of truth. "Are you out of your mind?" she shrieked, her voice a shrill instrument of fury. There was no greeting, just pure, unfiltered rage. "What the hell was that email? You're not participating? Who do you think you are?" I kept my voice even, almost monotone. "I said what I said, Jessica. I'm not comfortable with that arrangement." "Comfortable?" she scoffed, her laugh sharp and humorless. "This isn't about your comfort. This is about Mom. After everything she has sacrificed for you, after letting you live in her house rent-free for years—" "I paid rent, Jessica," I cut in, my voice still calm, but with a new edge of steel. "I paid $500 a month for 3 years. That's $18,000. It wasn't free." There was a stunned silence on the other end of the line. She clearly wasn't expecting me to have the numbers. She wasn't expecting facts. She was expecting me to crumble under the weight of her guilt trip. That barely covered your expenses," she stammered, trying to regain her footing. "You have no idea what it costs to run a household." "Maybe not," I said, "but I do know what my boundaries are now. And my boundary is that I will not be told how to spend $2,000 of my own money. Money that I earned, by the way, at the job you all thought was a joke." "Oh, I see," she spat, her voice dripping with venom. "So you get one little promotion and suddenly you're too good for your own family. Is that it? This is exactly why we had to do what we did. You're selfish, Alex. You've always been selfish and ungrateful." Ungrateful. The word hung in the air between us. The same word my mother had used. It was their go-to weapon, the final accusation when they had nothing left. But this time, it didn't hurt. It just sounded pathetic, empty. It was the desperate cry of a manipulator losing control. "I'm not having this conversation with you, Jessica," I said, my voice final. "Oh, yes, you are," she yelled. "You're going to listen to me. You owe us. You owe Mom. You will send me that money, or I swear to God—" And that's when I dropped the bomb. It wasn't a loud explosion. It was quiet, almost surgical. No, I said, my voice as cold and clear as glass. I won't. This conversation is over. And then I did something the old Alex would have never dared to do. I hung up the phone. I didn't wait for her to finish screaming. I didn't wait for her final volley of insults. I just ended it. Then, I opened my contacts, found her name, and pressed the block caller button. A small, simple action. But it felt monumental. It was the sound of a cage door swinging shut, with me on the outside. For the first time in my life, I had not only stood up to them, I had walked away. And as my phone immediately started buzzing with a new number, undoubtedly Mark or my mother, ready for their turn, I just smiled, silenced it, and let it buzz. They could scream into the void all they wanted. I wasn't listening anymore. Blocking Jessica's number was like pulling a pin from a grenade. The explosion wasn't immediate, but the chain reaction was swift and predictable. I didn't have to imagine what happened next. I had lived through enough of their dysfunctional dynamics to script it myself. A furious Jessica, sputtering with disbelief, would have immediately called Mark. Mark, ever the enforcer, would have absorbed her rage and amplified it, framing my defiance as an unforgivable attack on the entire family structure. And both of them would have run straight to my mother, painting me as the villain, the ungrateful child who had turned his back on them all, simply because I wouldn't cough up $2,000 on command. The digital assault began within the hour. My phone, which had been blissfully silent, lit up with a ferocity I hadn't seen since the day I was kicked out. First came the emails. Mark sent a long, rambling message, a masterpiece of self-righteous indignation. He accused me of shattering our mother's heart, of being poisoned by money, and of destroying the family over a simple birthday gift. He wrote about loyalty and duty, conveniently forgetting that his loyalty had evaporated the moment my share of the house became an inconvenience. I read the first few lines, then deleted them without finishing. Then came my mother. Her emails were different. They were a masterclass in emotional manipulation. She didn't rage. She wept. At least that's what the words on the screen wanted me to believe. She wrote about her sacrifices, the lonely years after my father died, the endless work it took to keep us all afloat. She reminded me of every scraped knee she had bandaged, every school project she had helped with. Each sentence was meticulously crafted to induce maximum guilt. "I never thought I would raise a son who could be so cruel," she wrote. "To throw all my love back in my face like this. I just don't understand what I did to deserve it." I stared at the words, feeling a familiar, sickening pull in my gut. The old guilt, the old programming. But this time, something was different. I could see the strings. I could see the puppet master at work. I deleted her email too. The text messages were more frantic. A barrage from unknown numbers, since I had blocked theirs. It was a digital siege. "You need to call your mother and apologize right now." That was from Mark. "I hope you're happy. Mom is an absolute wreck because of you." That was probably Jessica, using someone else's phone. They were trying to break me down, to overwhelm my defenses with a flood of shame and obligation. But my new apartment, my fortress, had strong walls. I put my phone on silent and turned it face down on the counter. The buzzing continued, a frantic, impotent vibration against the cold granite. It was the sound of their powerlessness, and it was the sweetest sound I had ever heard. For a few weeks, an uneasy quiet settled in. I knew they were stewing, plotting. My birthday came and went without a single message. So did Thanksgiving. The silence was a statement. I was officially excommunicated. It should have hurt, but mostly, it just felt peaceful. The constant low-grade anxiety I had lived with my entire life was gone. I was working hard, seeing my therapist, and slowly building a new life with friends who actually respected me. My friend Mike invited me to his family's Thanksgiving. It was normal. People laughed. They disagreed without screaming. They asked me about my job and actually listened to the answer. It was a glimpse into a world I never knew existed, and it was both wonderful and heartbreaking. The real storm broke exactly 6 months after the day I was thrown out. I was at my desk, wrapping up a report, when my phone started buzzing, and it didn't stop. A text from my mother, then another, and another, one after another, a relentless stream of notifications. I ignored them at first, but they kept coming, each one more frantic than the last. Alex, please answer. I need to talk to you. This is an emergency. Please, I'm begging you. My heart started to pound. An emergency? Had something happened to one of them? Despite everything, a flicker of concern cut through my defenses. I muted the notifications, but I couldn't focus. That night, I couldn't sleep. The messages kept coming, the tone shifting from panicked pleas to accusations and back again. By morning, I had 63 unread messages from my mother. The final one, sent at 3 in the morning, was different. It just said, I made a terrible mistake. I've lost everything. I need your help. Against my better judgment, against the advice my therapist would surely give me, I didn't call her. I called Dave. He was the only one who had shown even a hint of remorse, the weak link in their chain of command. He answered on the second ring, his voice heavy with exhaustion. What's going on with Mom? I asked, cutting straight to the point. He let out a long, heavy sigh, a sigh that carried the weight of a world collapsing. She lost it all, Alex, he said, his voice cracking. Every single penny. The story came out in jagged, unbelievable pieces. My mother had indeed sold the house, receiving the full $750,000. But instead of investing it wisely, instead of securing her retirement, she had been duped. A charismatic financial advisor she had met through her church circle had promised her astronomical returns. He had filled her head with dreams of doubling her money, of living a life of luxury. So she gave him everything, the entire amount, in one lump sum. And then he vanished. The accounts were empty. The phone number was disconnected. The man never existed. It was a classic, brutal scam. And she wasn't his only victim. He had swindled a dozen other people in her community. I was silent, trying to process the sheer scale of the catastrophe. That's horrible, I said, and I meant it. No matter what she had done to me, the thought of her being so cruelly deceived was genuinely awful. But why is she calling me? Where are Mark and Jessica? Another pause. This one was heavier than the last. They're not speaking to her, Dave said quietly. What? Why? Because she promised them a cut, he explained, his voice laced with a bitterness I'd never heard from him before. A big one. She promised Mark $100,000 for a down payment on a vacation home in Florida. He'd already put a non-refundable deposit of $25,000 on it, based on her promise. She promised Jessica $50,000 for a home renovation. They had plans for that money, Alex. When they found out it was all gone, they exploded. They said she was irresponsible, that she had betrayed them. Mark called her a fool. They haven't spoken to her in a week. The irony was so thick I could barely breathe. Betrayal. Irresponsibility. The very words they had thrown at me were now being used to condemn her. She had built her entire world on a foundation of control and financial leverage, and in one fell swoop, it had all been wiped away. And the golden children she had always favored, they had abandoned her the second the money disappeared. And there's more, Dave continued, his voice barely a whisper. She has nowhere to live. The new owners took possession of the old house last week. She's been staying at a cheap motel out by the airport, but her savings are almost gone. He hesitated, and I knew what was coming next. She mentioned your new apartment, Alex. She expects to move in with you. And there it was. The ultimate act of narcissistic delusion. The woman who had packed my life into trash bags and thrown me onto the street without a moment's notice, the woman whose other children had just disowned her, now expected me, the son she had discarded, to be her savior, to take her in. The audacity of it was breathtaking. It wasn't just a request, it was an assumption. In her mind, it was my duty. I was the last resort, the final safety net she thought she was entitled to. And as I stood there, phone pressed to my ear, I realized this was the moment my entire life had been leading up to. This was the final test. And I knew exactly what I had to do. I told Dave I needed to think. After I hung up, I sat in silence for a long time, letting the sheer weight of the situation settle over me. The old Alex would have been torn apart by guilt. He would have felt the crushing weight of obligation, the desperate need to be the hero, to swoop in and fix the mess, hoping it would finally earn him the love and respect he craved. But the old Alex was gone. I spent the next hour on the phone with my therapist. We talked through every angle, every potential pitfall. She didn't tell me what to do. She just helped me find the answer that was already inside me, the answer that aligned with the new, stronger person I was becoming. I agreed to meet my mother. Not at my apartment. Never at my apartment. We met at a neutral public space, a small, anonymous coffee shop halfway between her motel and my place. When I walked in, I barely recognized her. The confident, immaculately dressed matriarch was gone. In her place was a woman who looked small, defeated. She wore cheap-looking sweatpants, and her hair was unkempt. She looked like she had aged 10 years in 6 months. She clutched her coffee cup with trembling hands, avoiding my eyes. She was the one who broke the silence, her voice a hoarse whisper. "Thank you for coming, Alex. I didn't think you would." I just nodded, taking a sip of my own coffee. I wasn't going to make this easy for her. She launched into the whole sordid story of the scam, the charming man, the broken promises. She painted herself as the victim, a trusting woman taken advantage of. There was no mention of her own greed, no mention of the plans she had made with my siblings for the money that was never really theirs. When she was finished, tears were streaming down her face. "I've lost everything," she choked out. "Mark and Jessica, they won't even answer my calls. They say I betrayed them." The word hung in the air between us. Betrayed. I let it sit there for a moment before I spoke, my voice calm and even. "I know the feeling," I said. Her head snapped up, her eyes flashing with a familiar indignation. "This is different," she insisted. "I was trying to build a future for all of us." "Were you?" I asked, my voice still quiet. "Were you thinking of my future when you packed my life into trash bags? Were you thinking of my future when you decided to cut me out of my inheritance?" "I made a mistake," she cried. "I handled it badly, I admit it, but my intentions were good." "Your intentions don't matter, Mom," I said, and the words felt like they were coming from a place of deep, hard-won certainty. "Your actions do. And your actions told me exactly what I was worth to you." The fight seemed to drain out of her. She slumped in her chair, the tears starting again. "I have nowhere to go, Alex," she whispered, finally getting to the point. "The motel money runs out on Friday. I have nothing left. Please, can I just stay with you for a little while? Just until I get back on my feet." And there it was, the request I had been preparing for. The old me would have caved, but I looked at the woman across from me, and I didn't just see my mother, I saw a pattern, a lifetime of her needs coming before mine. I saw the expectation, the entitlement, the absolute certainty in her eyes that, when all else failed, I would be there to catch her. I took a deep breath. "No," I said. The word was quiet, but it landed in the space between us with the force of a thunderclap. Her eyes widened in disbelief. "No?" she repeated, as if she had misheard. "What do you mean, no?" "I mean, no, you cannot move in with me," I said, my voice firm, unwavering. "My home is my sanctuary. It's the one place on earth where I get to feel safe. You took that away from me once. I will not let you do it again." For the first time in my life, I wasn't backing down. I wasn't apologizing. I was choosing myself. This was a massive moment. If you support this powerful decision, Drop a flexed bicep emoji in the comments right now to send some strength his way on this journey. The air crackled with tension. My mother stared at me, her expression shifting from disbelief to pure rage. "After everything I've done for you?" she hissed, her voice low and venomous. "I sacrificed everything to raise you, and this is how you repay me? You would let your own mother live on the street?" "I am not letting you live on the street," I said, cutting through her guilt trip with surgical precision. "I told you I would think about how I could help. And I have. I'm willing to help you. But it will be on my terms, not yours." I leaned forward, my hands steady on my own coffee cup. "Here is my offer. I will help you find a decent, affordable senior living apartment. I've already researched a few options. And once you're moved in, I will contribute $500 a month towards your expenses. Consistently. Every month." She stared at me, speechless. "But," I continued, "this offer comes with one non-negotiable condition. You and I will attend family therapy sessions together, with my therapist. We need a professional to help us navigate this, to build something new, because what we had before, it was broken." I leaned back, my part said. "That's the deal. Take it or leave it." She looked at me as if I were a stranger. And in that moment, I suppose I was. I was no longer the compliant, eager-to-please child. I was an adult, with boundaries made of steel. I was not responsible for her happiness. I was not responsible for fixing her mistakes. I could offer compassion, but I would not offer myself up for sacrifice on the altar of her needs, ever again. I put $100 bill on the table to cover our coffees and stood up. "You have my number," I said. "Let me know what you decide." And I walked out of that coffee shop, leaving her alone with the consequences of her own actions. As I stepped out into the bright afternoon sun, I didn't feel guilty. I didn't feel angry. I felt light, free. The chains of a lifetime had finally been broken. That night, I didn't call my siblings. I called Mike. I told him everything. He just listened, and when I was done, he said, "Dude, I'm so damn proud of you." We ordered a pizza, cracked open a couple of beers, and just hung out. It was simple. It was real. I went to work the next day and had a one-on-one with my boss, Peterson. He told me the numbers on my latest campaign were killer and that the executive board was very impressed. My lawyer, Ms. Albright, sent me an email saying our legal case regarding the inheritance was looking very strong. These people, Mike, Peterson, Ms. Albright, my therapist, they weren't bound to me by blood. But they were my real family, my chosen family. They were the ones who saw my worth, who respected my boundaries, who supported my growth. They were the foundation on which I would build my new life, a life that belonged entirely to me. A year can change everything. Fast forward 12 months, and my life is unrecognizable. My mother, after a week of desperate silence, accepted my offer. The therapy sessions were excruciating at first. More tears, more accusations. But slowly, painstakingly, with the help of a neutral third party, a few cracks of light started to appear. She now lives in a modest but clean senior apartment complex. The $500 I send her every month, along with her Social Security, is enough for her to live on. Just enough. There are no more luxury cruises in her future. She is learning, for the first time in her life, to live with consequences. The lawsuit over the house inheritance, initiated by my lawyer, Ms. Albright, settled out of court. Faced with clear evidence of their conspiracy to defraud me of my legal share, they folded quickly. My final payout, after legal fees, was a significant sum that became the down payment on my own place. Mark and Jessica were furious. Their golden goose had not only flown the coop, but had also taken a chunk of the farm with it. Mark remains distant, too proud to ever admit he was wrong. I hear he's still bitter about losing that deposit on his Florida condo. Jessica has sent a few tentative texts, mostly complaining about her own life, but there has been no apology. The door with them isn't locked, but it's firmly closed for now. The biggest surprise has been Dave. About 2 months ago, he called me. He asked if we could get coffee. He looked different, tired, humbled. He sat across from me and for the first time looked me in the eye as an equal. He apologized. A real, unconditional apology. "I knew it was wrong, Alex," he said, his voice quiet. I went along. It was easier. I'm sorry I wasn't a better brother to you." I accepted his apology. Our relationship is still a work in progress, but for the first time, it feels real. Today, I'm the director of marketing at my firm. I lead a team of 15 people. I'm respected. I'm valued. And a few weeks ago, I stood in the empty living room of my own 2-bedroom condo, looking out at the Chicago skyline. The keys felt heavy and real in my hand. This place, this is mine. Bought with my money, earned through my hard work. No one can pack this up in trash bags. No one can tell me it's time to leave. This is my home. As I stood there, watching the city lights flicker on as dusk settled in, the whole journey flashed before my eyes. They thought they were throwing out their garbage, the inconvenient son, the underachiever. But what they really did was throw out a seed. They cast me out into the dirt, expecting me to wither and die. They had no idea I would land in fertile ground, that I would find the strength to grow roots, to reach for the sun, and to finally bloom on my own terms. The greatest lesson I've learned is that your value is not determined by the people who are incapable of seeing it. It's forged in the fires of your own resilience. And sometimes, the most loving thing you can do for yourself, and even for the people who hurt you, is to build a boundary, a wall. Not to keep them out forever, but to give yourself a safe space to heal, to grow, and to decide who gets the privilege of being in your life. Family isn't just about blood. It's about respect. It's about support. It's a choice. And today, I choose a family that chooses me back. Have you ever had to build a difficult boundary with the people who were supposed to love you most? How did you navigate that painful conversation? Let me know your story in the comments below. And if this resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more stories about finding your strength. Because sometimes, the worst thing that ever happens to you can be the very thing that sets you free.